The safety deposit box key was no bigger than her thumbnail, hidden inside the torn lining of Marcus's vintage Hermes briefcase. The one he'd retired to his study years ago, claiming sentimental value from his father's estate. Victoria Chen-Sterling held it up to the afternoon light streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows of their Fifth Avenue penthouse, watching how the brass caught the March sun, and wondered why her hands weren't shaking. 25 years of marriage, and she'd never seen this key before. She should have been reorganizing the study for the Lenox Hill Hospital charity auction, boxing up first editions and vintage watches Marcus had collected but never touched. Instead, she was discovering secrets that would shatter everything she thought she knew about her life. The briefcase had fallen from the top shelf when she'd pulled down the banker's boxes, splitting open along its worn seam with a sound like ripping silk. She'd cursed Marcus would be upset about the damage to his late father's briefcase, the one he touched reverently whenever he talked about the old man's journey from bankruptcy to billions, until she'd seen the key taped inside the lining, along with a small card bearing only a box number and the name of a bank she'd never heard Marcus mention. First Security of Queens. Queens. Marcus Sterling, whose idea of slumming was the Upper West Side, who'd once hired a helicopter to avoid traffic to JFK, had something hidden in Queens. Victoria sat down on the leather ottoman, her cream Chanel suit suddenly feeling like armor she didn't know she'd need. Outside, Manhattan sparkled in the spring sunshine, oblivious to the fracture spreading through her perfect life. She turned the key over, noting the box number. 447. Such an ordinary number for what she instinctively knew was far from ordinary. The study around her bore all the markers of their success, signed first editions behind glass, photographs with 3 presidents, the Monet sketch she'd bought him for their 20th anniversary. This room where Marcus conducted his most private business calls, where he'd built his empire one acquisition at a time. How many times had she brought him coffee here, finding him on calls with Singapore at midnight, Tokyo at dawn? How many secrets had these mahogany walls absorbed? Her phone buzzed. Emma. Sis! Don't forget dinner tonight. Marcus already confirmed. He's actually leaving the office before 9 for once. I'm making that seafood risotto you love. And I have news. Victoria stared at the message. Her younger sister Emma, forever the optimist, the one who remembered every birthday and organized family dinners with military precision. Sweet Emma, who'd lived in their Hamptons guest house for 2 years after her devastating breakup 8 years ago, who'd cried in Victoria's arms about never finding true love. Emma, who'd never married despite being beautiful, Harvard-educated, and constantly surrounded by admirers from her work at the UN. Emma, who always seemed to know Marcus's schedule better than Victoria did, who texted him directly about family plans. A cold finger traced down Victoria's spine. Of course. See you at 7. Can't wait to hear your news, she texted back, each word feeling like glass in her throat. Then she called her driver. Carlos, I need to run an errand somewhere discreet. Of course, Mrs. Sterling. I'll be out front in 5 minutes. She slipped the key into her purse, grabbed her sunglasses, and paused at the mirror in the foyer. 48 years old, and she still looked like the gallery curator Marcus had fallen for at that Christie's auction all those years ago. Her black hair, now streaked with silver she refused to dye, was pulled back in a sleek chignon. Her mother's jade earrings, the ones she wore for luck, caught the light. She looked composed, elegant, every inch the billionaire's wife. But behind her dark eyes, something was already changing, like ice forming over deep water. First Security of Queens occupied a narrow building squeezed between a bubble tea shop and a tax office, 43 minutes from their Fifth Avenue penthouse through Tuesday afternoon traffic. The bank manager, a nervous man with thinning hair and a coffee stain on his tie, barely glanced at her identification before leading her to the vault. Box 447, he said, pulling out the long metal container with practiced efficiency. I'll give you privacy. Take as long as you need. Just press the button when you're finished. The moment his footsteps faded, Victoria lifted the lid. Her life split into before and after. Bank statements, dozens of them, showing monthly transfers of $50,000 to Emma Chen for the past 20 years. The deposits had started 3 months before Victoria's wedding, before she'd even said "I do" at St. Patrick's Cathedral, before their honeymoon in Santorini, before any of the life they'd built together. Marcus had been paying her sister. But that wasn't the worst part. That was just the overture to the symphony of betrayal. Behind the bank statements were photographs, organized chronologically in clear plastic sleeves. Emma pregnant, Marcus's hand on her belly, both of them laughing on what looked like a private beach. The metadata visible in the corner. March 2004. Turks and Caicos. Victoria remembered that trip. Marcus's emergency acquisition meeting that she couldn't attend because of her father's surgery. Emma in a hospital bed, exhausted but radiant, holding a newborn. Marcus beside her, his expression soft with a tenderness Victoria recognized. The same look he'd had when they'd talked about having children, before the first failed IVF cycle. Emma and Marcus at what looked like a school play, sitting together like proud parents, his arm around her shoulders. The photo was taken from behind, but she recognized his watch, the Patek Philippe she'd given him for their 15th anniversary. More photos. Birthday parties in apartments Victoria had never seen. Christmas mornings in a house that wasn't theirs. 3 children growing up in a parallel life, documented in hundreds of images. 3 birth certificates, all listing Emma Chen as the mother. The father's name was left blank, but the birth dates aligned with Marcus's business trips to Singapore, always timed when Victoria had gallery obligations she couldn't escape, exhibitions in London or Paris that required her presence. David Chen, born July 15, 2004. Now 19, at Princeton, studying computer science like Marcus. Sophia Chen, born November 3, 2007. 16, at Dalton, the same school where Victoria served on the board. Michael Chen, born February 20th, 2012. 12 years old, with Marcus's exact chin dimple and the Sterling family's distinctive green eyes that Victoria had always thought was just an unfortunate coincidence. 3 children. Emma's 3 children, whom Victoria had bounced on her knee at family gatherings, whom she'd bought Christmas presents for, whom she'd loved like the nieces and nephews she thought they were. The room spun. Victoria gripped the edge of the table, forcing herself to breathe through the nausea. She thought of last Thanksgiving, Emma's kids calling her Aunt Vicky, Michael showing her his science project about genetics, genetics. While Marcus and Emma exchanged looks she now understood weren't about coordinating dinner dishes. 20 years. For 20 years, while Victoria had undergone 3 rounds of IVF, while she'd cried in Marcus's arms about their failure to have children, while she'd been told her eggs were incompatible with his sperm as a medical impossibility, she now realized he'd been building a second family with her sister. She remembered Dr. Hartman's confused face during their last consultation. I don't understand these results. Individually, you're both perfectly healthy. There's no medical reason. Marcus had switched doctors after that, finding one who confirmed the incompatibility diagnosis. Her phone rang. Marcus. She let it go to voicemail, then played it. Hey, love. Emma mentioned dinner tonight. I might be a few minutes late. Got a call with Tokyo. Don't wait for me to start. Oh, and I love you. You know that, right? More than anything. The casual domesticity of it. The practiced lie about Tokyo when he was probably with Emma right now. The declaration of love that tasted like poison. It made bile rise in her throat. How many thousands of lies had she swallowed without tasting their bitterness? Victoria photographed every document with methodical precision, every picture, every piece of evidence. Her hands were steady now, her mind clear and cold. Then she pulled out the next item in the box, a manila envelope marked legal. Inside, a trust fund document for each child, funded by Sterling Industries subsidiaries. $50 million per child, accessible at 25. The documents were dated last month. Another envelope, property deeds. A brownstone in Brooklyn Heights, purchased in 2003. A house in Scarsdale, a condo in Miami. All in Emma's name, all purchased by shell companies that traced back. She followed the paper trail with the expertise of someone who'd helped Marcus structure dozens of deals to Sterling Industries. Then she found the letters, bundled in a red silk ribbon. Emma's handwriting, Marcus's, a 20-year correspondence. She opened the most recent, dated just 2 months ago. My darling Marcus, I know we agreed to wait until after Mom and Dad's anniversary party to tell Victoria, but I can't pretend anymore. 20 years of loving you in the shadows has been both my greatest joy and deepest agony. The children deserve to know their father publicly. They deserve the Sterling name. David's already asking questions. He looks just like you, and he's figured out the timeline doesn't match my story about his father. Sophia found old photos and knows something's off, and I deserve to stop being the sister at the table, watching you with her, pretending my children are another man's. After Mom and Dad's golden anniversary in May, we tell her, it's time. I know you worry about the prenup, but surely after 25 years, after everything, she'll be reasonable. She loves the children. She'll understand we never meant to hurt her. All my love forever, Emma. Marcus's response in his distinctive handwriting, my darling girl, just 2 more months. After the party, after your parents have their moment, we'll handle Victoria. The lawyers say the prenup is ironclad if we're not careful. But I've been moving assets for years now, preparing. She'll be taken care of. She can keep the penthouse, a generous settlement. She'll never have to work. But the real life, our life, finally begins. The children need their father's name before David graduates. I'm tired of missing moments that matter. Soon, my love. Soon. Forever yours, Em. Victoria's hands did shake then, but not from sadness. From rage so pure it felt like ice in her veins. The anniversary party. Their parents' 50th wedding anniversary next month, May 15th, where the entire extended family would gather at the St. Regis Ballroom, the one she'd booked a year ago, where Marcus's business partners, senators, even the mayor would come to celebrate love and loyalty, where she, Victoria, was giving the main speech about the endurance of commitment, about her parents' journey from a small apartment in Flushing to success in America, about family bonds that couldn't be broken. She pulled out the final item, a small velvet jewelry box. Inside, a diamond ring, easily 5 carats, with a note, for when you're finally mine publicly. Soon. -M double quote. An engagement ring, for Emma, while Victoria still wore her own wedding rings. She placed everything back in the box exactly as she'd found it, each item in its precise position. On her way out, she stopped at the manager's desk. The box rental, she said, her voice steady as marble. How is it paid? Annual automatic withdrawal from Sterling Industries corporate account 7741. Mr. Sterling set it up personally. Corporate. Not even personal. He'd been writing off his affair as a business expense, probably categorized as consultant retention, or research and development. She knew because she'd helped him structure similar hiding places for acquisitions he didn't want competitors to track. In the car back to Manhattan, Victoria didn't cry. Instead, she called James Nakamura, the private investigator who'd done background checks for the gallery's high-value clients, the one who'd uncovered a Basquiat forgery that saved her reputation. James, I need your complete discretion and your best work. Money is no object. What am I investigating, Mrs. Sterling? Everything about my husband and Emma Chen, 20 years back. Every meeting, every transaction, every photograph that exists, every property, every bank account, every trip they've taken. I want to know when they breathe in sync. There was a pause. Emma Chenawar, your sister Emma? The very same. Another pause, longer this time. Mrs. Sterling, I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Be thorough. How long do you need? For 20 years? I'll need at least. You have 10 days. I want everything before April 1st. Triple your usual rate. I'll have a preliminary report in 48 hours. She hung up and stared at the Manhattan skyline as they crossed the Queensboro Bridge. 20 years of deception. 20 years of her sister smiling across holiday tables, helping plan Victoria's anniversary parties, holding her while she cried about her infertility. 20 years of Marcus's tender kisses, his public devotion, his Oscar-worthy performance as the devoted husband. She thought about Emma's children, David, who had indeed inherited Marcus's brilliant mind for coding. Sophia, who painted like Victoria had at that age, who'd asked her advice about art school just last week. Little Michael, who called her his favorite aunt, who had Marcus's laugh and Emma's eyes and a trust fund worth more than most people would see in 10 lifetimes. Her phone buzzed. Emma again. Marcus says he'll pick up wine. Red or white? Also, my news is so exciting, you're going to die. Victoria typed back, white. The Chablis he loves. Can't wait to hear everything. Let them enjoy their wine. Let them sit across from her tonight, thinking her ignorant, thinking they'd won, thinking they'd successfully scheduled her humiliation for after their parents' party. 6 weeks until the anniversary. 6 weeks to plan not just revenge, but complete annihilation. As the car pulled up to their building, Roger the doorman rushed to help her out. Beautiful day, Mrs. Sterling. Getting more beautiful by the moment, Roger. The elevator whisked her up 40 floors to the penthouse. Rosa, their housekeeper of 15 years, was arranging white orchids in the foyer. Mrs. Sterling, should I set the dining room for tonight? Ms. Emma called to confirm 3 for dinner. Yes, Rosa. Use the Waterford crystal and the good china, the wedding set. A special occasion? Victoria smiled, and it felt like a blade. You could say it's the beginning of something, or perhaps the end. Either way, it deserves our best. Should I prepare the guest room? Sometimes Ms. Emma stays late. Not tonight, she'll be going home to her children. Rosa looked confused. Emma usually said the children were with their father on Tuesday nights. Victoria had always assumed she meant some ex-boyfriend, the one from the devastating breakup. Now she knew exactly which father Emma meant. Victoria went to her bedroom, their bedroom, though how many nights had Marcus actually slept here versus wherever he met Emma, and locked the door. She sat at her vanity, looking at the woman in the mirror. 48 years old, successful in her own right. Beautiful still, according to the society pages. Rich beyond measure, and the biggest fool in Manhattan. Number. Not a fool. Fools didn't plan what she was about to plan. She opened her laptop and began her research. First, divorce lawyers, not the white shoe firms Marcus knew, but the ones who handled the ugly cases, the ones who knew how to find hidden assets and destroy opposition. She made a list. Sarah Brennan, who'd handled the Kravis divorce. James Liu, who'd gotten Melinda Gates her settlement. Patricia Williams, who specialized in financial fraud within marriages. Next, forensic accountants. If Marcus had been hiding money for 20 years, funding a parallel life, there would be trails. She knew enough about his business to know where to look, which subsidiaries he used for special projects, which offshore accounts he thought were invisible. Then she opened a new browser, one Marcus couldn't track, and began researching something else entirely. How to destroy someone completely and legally. How to ensure that when the truth came out, she'd be the only one left standing. Her phone rang. Her mother. Victoria, darling, I wanted to confirm the flowers for the anniversary party. Emma suggested white roses, but I thought perhaps red? White roses are perfect, Mom. Pure and traditional, like family should be. Are you all right? You sound different? I'm perfect. Just planning some surprises for the party. Nothing too elaborate. Your father hates fuss. Don't worry. It'll be unforgettable. She hung up and thought about her parents. Richard and Linda Chen, who'd come from Taiwan with nothing, built a restaurant empire and preached family loyalty above all else. Who loved Emma's children as their own blood, which, Victoria now realized with sick irony, they were. Her father, who still called Marcus the son I never had. Her mother, who credited Marcus with taking care of both her girls. They would be destroyed. But that was Marcus and Emma's doing, not hers. A text from Marcus. Leaving office now. Want me to grab anything? Love you to the moon. She responded, just yourself. That's all I need. Then she called her lawyer, her personal lawyer, not the family one. Catherine, I need to move some money, quietly, and I need to establish some new accounts. ones that can't be traced back to joint assets. Victoria is everything. Everything's perfect. I'm just diversifying. Can you handle it? I'll send you encrypted instructions. How much are we talking? Let's start with 50 million. A pause. I'll have it ready by tomorrow. That evening, Victoria dressed carefully. The black Dior dress Marcus loved, the diamond earrings he'd given her for their 20th anniversary, the perfume Emma had helped her pick out last Christmas. Every detail perfect, every element a small knife they wouldn't feel until it was too late. She stood at the window of their penthouse, looking down at Central Park as the sun set over the city. Somewhere out there, 3 children were doing homework, or watching TV or texting friends, unaware that their entire existence was built on the bones of her marriage. They were innocent in this, she reminded herself. David, Sophia, and Michael would be protected. They didn't choose their parents' deception. The elevator chimed. Marcus was home. Victoria? Where's my beautiful wife? She turned from the window, smile in place. Right here, darling. Ready for dinner with family. He crossed the room and kissed her, his hand cupping her face with practiced tenderness. He smelled like Tom Ford cologne and lies. You look stunning. Emma's going to be jealous. Emma's never been jealous of me, Victoria said, and for the first time understood it was true. Why would Emma be jealous when she had everything that mattered? She's bringing dessert, that chocolate soufflé you love. How thoughtful. She always knows what people really want. Marcus poured himself a scotch, the Macallan 25 she'd bought him last Christmas. You know, I was thinking. After your parents' anniversary, maybe we should take a trip. Just the 2 of us. Somewhere romantic, like a second honeymoon. The cruelty of it, planning a distraction trip for after he'd destroyed her, was breathtaking. That sounds wonderful. Where were you thinking? Maybe Bali? Or the Maldives? Somewhere far from everything. Far from the fallout, he meant. Far from the New York society gossip when he left her for her sister. Perfect. I'll start looking at places. The doorbell rang. Emma, using her key, called out, I'm here! And I brought wine too, because Marcus always forgets. She appeared in the doorway, radiant in a red dress that hugged her still perfect figure, her dark hair flowing over her shoulders. At 42, she looked like she had at 25, when she'd been Victoria's maid of honor, when she'd held Victoria's train as she walked down the aisle toward Marcus. Vicky. Emma hugged her, enveloping her in jasmine perfume and betrayal. You look gorgeous. Doesn't she look gorgeous, Marcus? Always, Marcus said, but his eyes lingered on Emma a moment too long. They sat at the dinner table, the one where they'd hosted senators and CEOs, where Victoria's parents had announced their retirement, where Emma had cried about her fictional broken heart. Rosa served the risotto Emma had brought. She'd always been a wonderful cook, probably learned to make all of Marcus's favorites over 20 years of practice. So, Victoria said, cutting through their small talk about the weather and Marcus's latest acquisition. What's your big news, Emma? Emma glowed, actually glowed. Well, it's about David. Victoria's hand tightened on her fork. Were they going to tell her now? Break the plan and confess before the anniversary? He got into MIT for graduate school, early admission to their AI program. Marcus beamed with unmistakable pride. That's incredible. He's brilliant. Just like his, Emma caught herself. Just like all the Chen family. Smart genes. The smartest, Victoria agreed, sipping her wine. Though he has some sterling qualities too, doesn't he? That focus, that drive. Reminds me of someone. Marcus choked slightly on his wine. Emma's eyes went wide. I mean, Victoria continued smoothly, he reminds me of Dad when he was building the restaurants. That same intensity. They relaxed, and the conversation continued. Emma talked about Sophia's art exhibition at Dalton next week, about Michael's soccer championship. Marcus offered to attend, if you need someone to cheer him on, since his dad's not around. The casual cruelty of it, playing the supportive uncle to his own son, made Victoria's stomach turn. Speaking of the children, Victoria said during dessert, Emma's perfect chocolate souffle melting on her tongue like sweet revenge. "I've been thinking about their college funds." Emma tensed. "Their college funds?" "Well, they're my only nieces and nephew. I want to make sure they're taken care of. Marcus, what do you think about setting up trusts?" Marcus's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "That's generous. But Emma's got it handled, right, Em?" "Of course," Emma said quickly. "The children are fine. Their father set things up before he left. The mythical father who'd abandoned them." Victoria wondered what story Emma had told the children. A dead hero? A complicated artist who couldn't handle responsibility? Or did they know somehow that their father sat at this very table eating their mother's risotto while his wife poured wine? "Still," Victoria pressed, "family takes care of family. That's what Mom and Dad always say." She watched them exchange a look, quick, practiced, invisible if you weren't looking for it. 20 years of secret communication, a language she'd never known existed in her own home. After dinner, Emma helped clear the table while Marcus took an urgent call from Tokyo in his study. In the kitchen, sisters side by side like they'd been their whole lives, Emma said, "You seem different tonight." "Different how?" "I don't know, just more yourself somehow, like you've figured something out." Victoria dried a crystal glass carefully. "You know me so well." "Of course I do. You're my sister, my best friend, the person I love most in the world, besides the kids." The words hung between them. Victoria noticed what was missing. Marcus wasn't on that list, because Emma didn't need to love him. She had him. "Emma," Victoria said, turning to look at her sister directly, "are you happy?" Emma's face cycled through emotions: surprise, guilt, defiance, and finally, a soft sadness. "Why would you ask that? You're 42, beautiful, brilliant, and alone, raising 3 kids. I worry about you." "I'm not alone," Emma said softly, then caught herself. "I mean, I have you, and Marcus, and Mom and Dad, the children. But don't you want more? A partner? Someone who chooses you first?" Emma's eyes filled with tears. She quickly blinked away. "Sometimes we don't get to be chosen first. Sometimes we're the secret that makes someone else's life possible." It was the closest thing to a confession Victoria would get, she realized. Emma justifying 20 years of betrayal as some kind of noble sacrifice. "You deserve to be someone's priority," Victoria said, meaning it. Her sister did deserve that, just not with Victoria's husband. "So do you," Emma whispered, then pulled her into a hug that felt like goodbye. Later, after Emma left with promises to see them at their mother's pre-anniversary lunch next week, Victoria and Marcus got ready for bed in their marble bathroom. Their movements were choreographed by decades of marriage, him brushing his teeth while she removed her makeup, her applying face cream while he set out his clothes for tomorrow. "Emma seemed happy tonight," he said carefully. "She did. The news about David is wonderful. He's a special kid. All of Emma's kids are." Victoria met his eyes in the mirror. "Yes, they're exceptional. Must be good genes." He looked away first, focusing on hanging his tie with unusual precision. In bed, Marcus pulled her close, his arm around her waist, his breath on her neck. "I love you," he murmured into the darkness. "I know," she said, and meant it. He did love her, in his way, the same way someone might love a beautiful painting they owned, proudly, publicly, but ultimately as a possession, not a partner. She lay awake as his breathing deepened into sleep, planning. 6 weeks until the anniversary party. 6 weeks to gather every piece of evidence, to position every chess piece, to ensure that when the bomb went off, she'd be the only one who knew it was coming. Tomorrow she'd meet with the lawyers. She'd start moving money. She'd begin documenting everything with James Nakamura's help. She'd become the detective in her own life story, the author of its ending. But tonight, she lay in the arms of a man who'd loved her sister for longer than he'd been married to her, who'd given Emma children while letting Victoria believe she was barren, who planned to discard her after her parents' golden anniversary like a schedule item checked off a list. Outside their window, Manhattan glittered, unaware that in this penthouse, a marriage was already dead and waiting for burial. Unaware that Victoria Chen-Sterling was no longer a victim, but an architect of destruction, planning something that would make headlines for years. She thought about the key, hidden now in a safety deposit box of her own. Such a small thing to unlock such enormous betrayal. But keys don't just open doors, they close them too. And in 6 weeks, at her parents' golden anniversary, she would close every door Marcus and Emma had ever hoped to walk through. The last thing she thought before finally drifting off to sleep was a memory from her wedding day. Emma, adjusting her veil, whispering, "I'd do anything for you, Vicky. Anything." Apparently, anything included stealing her husband before she'd even married him. But Victoria was about to show them both what anything really meant. 10 days after finding the key, Victoria Chen-Sterling sat in the private conference room of Brennan Liu and Associates, watching her new reality crystallize on a wall of screens. James Nakamura had outdone himself. 20 years of deception mapped out like a corporate acquisition, complete with timelines, financial flows, and enough photographic evidence to fill a museum of betrayal. "This goes deeper than you initially suspected," James said, his usually impassive face showing traces of sympathy. He clicked to the next slide. "The first hotel receipt dates back to February 2001. That's how. 3 months before my wedding." Victoria's voice was steady, her hands folded precisely in her lap. She'd worn her armor today, the severe black Saint Laurent suit that Marcus said made her look like a sexy CEO. "I know, I found that already." "But did you find this?" James pulled up a medical record. "Your IVF treatments. The clinic Marcus chose, Dr. Raymond Kellner, wasn't just any fertility specialist. He lost his license in 2019 for falsifying records. Your husband paid him $200,000 off the books during your treatment period." Sarah Brennan, the divorce attorney whose reputation for destroying unfaithful husbands was legendary, leaned forward. "He sabotaged your fertility treatments?" "Not sabotaged," James corrected. "The treatments were real. But the diagnosis was fabricated. These are your actual test results from the initial consultation with Dr. Hartman before Marcus switched doctors." He displayed another document. "You were perfectly fertile. Both of you were. The incompatibility was a complete fabrication." Victoria felt the air leave her lungs. She'd suspected, but knowing, seeing it documented, was different. "So, I could have had children." "Based on these results easily." James's voice gentled. "Marcus needed you to believe you couldn't, because Emma was already pregnant with their first child. The timeline is clear. She conceived in April 2004, 1 month after your third failed IVF cycle. The cruelty of it was breathtaking. She remembered that night, crying in Marcus's arms, him promising they'd try again, that their love was enough even without children. All while Emma was carrying his baby. "There's more," James continued, clicking through financial records. "The payments to Emma aren't just personal support. He's been funneling money through 17 different shell companies, all leading back to Sterling Industries subsidiaries. Total diverted funds over 20 years, approximately $300 million. Patricia Williams, the forensic accountant Victoria had hired, spoke up. "That's wire fraud, tax evasion, and embezzlement. The IRS would be very interested in this structure." "What about the prenup?" Victoria asked. Sarah smiled, and it was the expression of a shark sensing blood. "The prenup has an infidelity clause that Marcus probably forgot about. It was his lawyer's standard boilerplate. Infidelity voids the agreement entirely, and you get 60% of all marital assets. But with the fraud evidence, we can push for more. Much more." "How much more?" "Everything. The house in the Hamptons, the penthouse, his stock options, the art collection. Criminal fraud during marriage overrides any protective provisions. He's looking at potential prison time if you want to pursue criminal charges." Victoria stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city 30 floors below. Somewhere out there, Marcus was probably at lunch with investors, charming them with his vision while Emma waited in whatever love nest he'd bought her. They thought they had 6 more weeks of safety until the anniversary party. 6 more weeks of their secret paradise. "Mrs. Sterling," James said carefully, "there's something else you need to see." She turned back to face the screens. A new set of images filled the wall. Emma at various stages of pregnancy, but these were different. Medical photos. "Your sister had complications during her first pregnancy, severe preeclampsia. The medical records show Marcus as the emergency contact listed as partner. He was in the delivery room for all 3 births." Victoria studied the images with clinical detachment. There was Marcus, holding newborn David while Emma slept, exhausted. Marcus cutting Sophia's umbilical cord. Marcus with Michael on his chest, skin to skin, the way they'd talked about him holding their babies that would never come. "The children," she said quietly. "What do they know?" "Based on our surveillance and intercepted communications, they believe their father was Emma's ex-boyfriend who left before Michael was born. But David's been asking questions. He's noticed the physical similarities to Marcus, the timeline inconsistencies. Smart kid." Of course he was smart. He had Marcus's analytical mind and Emma's cunning. "I have a different question," Patricia interjected. "Do you want to destroy them, or do you want to win?" Victoria turned to face her team. "What's the difference?" "Destruction is emotional, satisfying but messy. Winning is strategic. You walk away with everything while they lose everything, but it looks clean. Legal, even justified." "I want both," Sarah laughed. "That's my kind of client." "So here's what we do. We document everything but file nothing yet. We wait for them to make the move, which according to these love letters, they're planning after the anniversary party. When they serve you with divorce papers, expecting to control the narrative, we counterstrike with everything. The fraud, the infidelity, the medical malpractice, the embezzlement." "But that's 6 weeks away," Victoria said. 6 weeks for you to position yourself perfectly," Sarah continued. "Move assets quietly, document more evidence, build relationships with the board members at Sterling Industries, many of whom would be appalled by the fraud. And most importantly, prepare for the aftermath." Victoria's phone buzzed. A text from her mother. "Lunch reminder. Don't forget, 1 o'clock at the club. Emma's bringing the children." The children. David, Sophia, and Michael, who called her Aunt Vicky and had no idea their entire existence was built on the destruction of her life. "I need to protect the children," Victoria said firmly. "They're innocent in this. Legally, they're actually entitled to Marcus's estate as his biological children," Patricia noted. "That could work in your favor during the divorce. Emma will have to choose between exposing them to protect their inheritance or keeping the secret to protect them from scandal." "She'll choose the money," Victoria said with certainty. "Emma always has. She just dresses it up as love." An hour later, Victoria sat at the Yale Club, watching her family arrange themselves around the table like players in a tragedy who didn't know the final act had already been written. Her mother, Linda, elegant in pearls and Chanel, discussing flower arrangements. Her father, Richard, reading stock reports on his phone while pretending to listen. Emma, radiant in a coral dress that Marcus had probably chosen, managing her 3 children with practiced ease. "Aunt Vicky!" Michael bounded over, all 12-year-old energy and Marcus's green eyes. "Mom says you're giving a speech at Grandma and Grandpa's party. Can you mention how Grandpa taught me to play poker?" "Michael!" Emma scolded, but her laugh was warm. "We don't need everyone knowing you're a card shark." "Like father, like son," Victoria said mildly, watching Emma's face freeze for a microsecond. David looked up from his phone, studying Victoria with those analytical Sterling eyes. "Actually, Aunt Victoria, I wanted to ask you something about genetics." The table stilled. "It's for my senior thesis," he continued, "about inherited traits. Like how Michael and I both have green eyes, but Mom has brown eyes. And green eyes are recessive, so our father must have had green eyes too. But Mom always said our fathers had brown eyes." Emma's knuckles went white around her water glass. "David, this isn't the time—" "It's fine," Victoria interrupted, meeting David's gaze. Genetics are fascinating. Sometimes family traits pop up in unexpected places. Your grandfather Chen's uncle had green eyes. It can skip generations. It was a lie, but David seemed to accept it, though his expression suggested he was filing the information away for later analysis. Smart boy. Too smart for his own good. Speaking of family, Linda announced, I've been thinking about the anniversary party. Victoria, you and Marcus will give the main toast, won't you? As the successful couple you are, you're such an inspiration. Of course, Mom, Victoria smiled, cutting her salmon with surgical precision. I've been working on something special. A video presentation about family, loyalty, and truth. How wonderful! Linda clapped her hands. Emma, you'll help her, won't you? You're so good with those computer things. Emma nearly choked on her salad. I'm sure Victoria has it handled. Actually, Victoria said, I'd love your input, Emma. After all, you know our family history better than anyone. All the secrets and stories. Sophia, 16 and artistic, looked between them with the intuition of a born observer. Why does everyone seem weird today? No one's weird, sweetheart, Emma said quickly. Aunt Victoria seems different, Sophia pressed, like she knows something. Out of the mouths of babes, Victoria thought. I do know something. I know your grandparents' love story deserves the perfect tribute. 50 years of marriage, building a life together, trusting each other completely. It's rare these days. Richard looked up from his phone. Trust is everything in a marriage. Without it, you have nothing. Exactly, Victoria agreed, looking directly at Emma. Nothing. After lunch, as they waited for their cars, Emma pulled Victoria aside. Are you okay? You seem different? Sophia's very perceptive. Victoria, if something's wrong, ow. What could be wrong? I have a successful husband who loves me, a beautiful home, a wonderful family. What more could I want? Emma's eyes filled with that guilty sadness Victoria now recognized. Children, she whispered. I know how much you wanted children. The audacity of it. Emma standing there with her stomach still soft from carrying Marcus's 3 babies, offering sympathy for the infertility her affair had necessitated. We don't always get what we want, Victoria said, but sometimes we get what we deserve. Emma flinched. That sounds ominous. Does it? I think it sounds like justice. Before Emma could respond, Michael ran over. Mom, can Aunt Vicky come to my soccer game Thursday? Mom said my dad can't make it, but maybe Uncle Marcus could come. Victoria watched Emma's face cycle through panic. Uncle Marcus is very busy, sweetheart. He's always busy, Michael said, disappointment clear in his voice. He never comes to anything. I'll be there, Victoria promised, ruffling his hair that felt exactly like Marcus's. Front row. That evening, Victoria found Marcus in his study, the room where this had all started. He was on a call, gesturing animatedly at his computer screen, the Manhattan skyline glittering behind him. She watched from the doorway, studying the man she'd loved for 25 years. Still handsome at 53, silver threading through his dark hair, the strong jaw that Michael had inherited, the green eyes that had captivated her at that Christie's auction a lifetime ago. He ended the call and smiled at her. Hey, beautiful. How was lunch with your family? Illuminating. David's asking questions about genetics. Marcus's hand stilled on his mouse. Smart kid. Too smart. He's noticed the green eyes. Lots of people have green eyes. Not in the Chen family. He stood crossing to pour himself a scotch. Want one? No. I want to talk about the anniversary party. What about it? He took a long sip, not quite meeting her eyes. Mom wants us to give the main toast. About marriage, trust, loyalty. Sounds perfect. His voice was carefully neutral. I'm thinking of doing a video presentation. Photos from throughout their marriage, a celebration of truth and honesty. Marcus set down his glass harder than necessary. That sounds elaborate. They deserve elaborate. 50 years, Marcus. Imagine being with someone for 50 years, knowing all their secrets, sharing everything. Victoria. I've been going through old photos for it. Found some interesting ones. That trip to Turks and Caicos in 2004, the acquisition meeting. You looked so happy in those photos. He went very still. What photos? Oh, just some from the hotel. You know how they always take those arrival photos at luxury resorts, for their archives. She smiled sweetly. You looked tan, relaxed, not like someone in acquisition meetings. Victoria, I don't know what you think, but I don't think anything, darling. I know you were working. You always work so hard, for the family. She left him standing there, scotch trembling slightly in his hand, and went to their bedroom. Her phone was buzzing with texts from James Nakamura. More evidence, more photos, more proof of what she already knew. But there was one that made her stop. A screenshot from Emma's phone, intercepted through the surveillance James had arranged. Emma to Marcus, sent 10 minutes ago. She knows something. The way she looked at me today. The things she said. We should move up our timeline. Marcus's reply, you're paranoid. Stick to the plan. After the party. Emma, what if she finds out before then? Marcus, she won't. I've been careful. The box is secure. Everything's hidden. Emma, I'm scared. Marcus, I love you. Trust me. 6 more weeks and we're free. Victoria smiled grimly. They thought they were scared now? They had no idea what fear was, but they would. Soon. She called Sarah Brennan. I want to accelerate things. What happened? They're getting nervous. Emma wants to move up their timeline. Let them. The more panicked they are, the more mistakes they'll make. I want something else documented. The medical malpractice. Can we get those fertility records authenticated? Already done. Dr. Hartman, your original doctor, is willing to testify. He kept copies of everything because he found the whole situation suspicious. He said he's been waiting 20 years for your call. 20 years. Everyone had been waiting 20 years while Victoria lived in oblivion. The next morning, Victoria woke to find Marcus already gone. A breakfast meeting, his note said. But his phone location, which she'd been tracking since finding the key, showed him at Emma's brownstone in Brooklyn Heights. The brownstone he'd bought her in 2003, when she was pregnant with David. Victoria dressed carefully, Armani, understated but powerful, and drove herself to Brooklyn. She parked across from the brownstone, watching. At 8:47 a.m., Marcus emerged, adjusting his tie, looking both ways like a criminal. Emma followed him to the door, still in her silk robe. His robe, actually. Victoria recognized it as the one she'd bought him for Christmas 3 years ago. They kissed in the doorway, not a quick peck, but something deep, familiar, comfortable, the kiss of people who'd been kissing for 20 years. Then Marcus got into his car and drove away, probably to circle back to his office and pretend he'd been in his breakfast meeting all along. Victoria waited 5 more minutes, then rang Emma's doorbell. The color drained from Emma's face when she opened the door. Victoria! What are you? I was in the neighborhood. Thought we could have coffee. The place is a mess. The kids just left for school. I don't mind. Victoria stepped past her sister into the foyer. The brownstone was beautiful. Exposed brick, modern kitchen, family photos everywhere. Photos that included Marcus if you looked carefully. There he was at Christmas, supposedly stopping by to drop off gifts. At Michael's birthday, delivering a present from Uncle Marcus. At David's science fair, just happening to be free that day. This is lovely, Victoria said, walking into the living room. Marcus has good taste in real estate. Emma froze. What? Oh, didn't he help you find this place? I remember him mentioning he had a colleague selling a brownstone back in 2003, right around when you were pregnant with David. Yes, he helped. Victoria picked up a photo from the mantel, the 3 children on a beach, laughing. Turks and Caicos? How did you... Emma caught herself. Yes. I saved up for years for that trip. The same resort where Marcus had his acquisition meetings in 2004. What a coincidence. Emma's hands trembled as she pushed her hair back. Victoria, why are you really here? Can't a sister visit? Victoria sat on the leather sofa, Marcus's favorite type of leather, she noted. Actually, I wanted to talk to you about something. Marcus has been acting strange lately. Emma went very still. Strange how? Distant. Secretive. Coming home late. You know how men are at this age. Midlife crisis and all that. Victoria watched her sister's face carefully. I'm worried he might be having an affair. The irony of it, Emma's face showing genuine distress at the thought of Marcus cheating, just not with her. Marcus would never, Emma started. Never? Really? A wealthy, handsome man who travels constantly? You don't think he'd ever be tempted? He loves you, Emma said weakly. Does he? Sometimes I wonder if he's capable of real love, or if we're all just acquisitions to him. Things to be obtained, managed, eventually discarded when they're no longer useful. Emma sank into a chair, and for a moment, Victoria saw her not as the other woman, but as her little sister, the girl she'd taught to ride a bike, whose scraped knees she'd bandaged, whose tears she'd dried after her first heartbreak. How had they gotten here? Victoria, Emma whispered, what would you do if Marcus was having an affair? Destroy him, Victoria said simply. And her. Emma's face went white. Even if there were circumstances, complications? What kind of complications? Children. What if there were children involved? Victoria stood, smoothing her skirt. Then I'd be sure to destroy him legally and financially, but protect the children. They didn't choose their parents' sins. She paused at the doorway. But the woman? The one who betrayed not just marriage vows but family bonds? Her I'd annihilate completely. She left Emma sitting there, face in her hands, and drove to Michael's school. His soccer game was that afternoon, and she'd promised to be there. She sat in the stands, watching Marcus's son, because that's what he was, undeniably Marcus's son, race across the field with natural athletic grace. Aunt Vicky, you came! Michael bounded over at halftime, sweaty and grinning. I promised, didn't I? Mom's usually the only one who comes. My dad, he's always traveling. Tell me about your dad, Victoria said carefully. Michael's face shuddered. Not much to tell. He left when I was a baby. Mom says he loved us but couldn't stay. Do you have any pictures of him? No, Mom says it's too painful for her. But sometimes, he trailed off. Sometimes I wonder if Uncle Marcus is actually my dad. We have the same eyes, and David says the genetics don't make sense, and the way Mom looks at him. Victoria's heart broke for this boy, too smart and too young to carry such suspicions. What does your mom say? Nothing. She just gets sad. But Aunt Vicky? He looked at her with those sterling green eyes, so much hope and hurt mixed together. If he was my dad, why wouldn't he want me? She pulled him into a hug, this nephew who was also her husband's son, this child caught in adult betrayals. Listen to me, Michael. Any father would be lucky to have you. You're smart, kind, talented. If someone can't see that, it's their loss, not yours. You really think so? I know so. After the game, which Michael's team won, Victoria drove home to find Marcus in the living room with someone unexpected. Robert Sterling, Marcus's older brother and the CFO of Sterling Industries. Victoria! Robert stood to kiss her cheek. You look lovely as always. I was just telling Marcus about the board's concerns. Concerns? She accepted a glass of wine from Marcus, noting his tight jaw. Nothing serious, Marcus said quickly. Robert laughed. 300 million in questionable transfers is hardly nothing, brother. The auditors are asking questions. Victoria kept her expression neutral. Transfers? To various subsidiaries and shell companies. All technically legal, but the pattern is unusual. The board wants a full audit before the next quarterly report. I'm sure Marcus has explanations for everything, Victoria said smoothly. He always does. That's what I told them. But Victoria, between us, if there's anything problematic, now would be the time to clean it up. The SEC is cracking down on corporate financial irregularities. After Robert left, Marcus poured himself another scotch. His third, she noted. 300 million? She asked mildly. It's complicated. Business stuff. I have an MBA from Wharton, Marcus. Try me. It's just restructuring. Tax optimization, nothing illegal. But something that would look bad if investigated? He turned to face her, and for a moment she saw fear in his eyes. Why are you asking? Because Robert's right. If there's something problematic, now would be the time to fix it, before it becomes public, before it affects the family. Family, he repeated almost bitterly. It's always about family, isn't it? Isn't it? She set down her wine glass. I'm going to bed. Don't stay up too late worrying. In their bedroom, she texted James Nakamura. Robert Sterling is suspicious about the transfers. Can we use him? James replied immediately. Already on it. He's been questioning the books for months. One anonymous tip, and he'll dig deeper. She then texted Sarah Brennan. How quickly can we freeze assets if needed? With evidence of fraud? 24 hours. Less if we claim imminent dissipation. Victoria smiled in the darkness. The pieces were moving into place faster than expected. Emma was panicking. Marcus was sloppy from fear. The board was asking questions. The anniversary party was still 4 weeks away, but the game might end sooner. Her phone buzzed. Emma, can we talk? Please, it's important. Victoria didn't respond. Let her sister stew in uncertainty. Let her wonder how much Victoria knew. Let her feel, for once, what Victoria had felt for 20 years. The sensation of living in a house built on lies, never knowing which board might give way beneath her feet. She thought about Michael asking if Marcus was his father, about David's questions about genetics, about Sophia's artistic eye that saw everything. They deserved better than this shadow life, better than being secrets and lies. When the truth came out, and it would either at the anniversary party or sooner if Emma and Marcus panicked, at least the children would finally know who they were. The next few days passed in a strange ballet of pretense. Victoria continued planning the anniversary party with her mother, selecting menu items and reviewing seating charts as if her world wasn't imploding. She attended gallery events with Marcus, playing the perfect wife while documenting every lie, every deception, every moment he spent texting Emma while pretending to check emails. James Nakamura's surveillance revealed the depth of their panic. Emma was researching divorce lawyers, not for herself, but investigating who Victoria might hire. Marcus was moving money, trying to hide assets, not knowing Victoria had already documented everything. They met daily now, sometimes at her brownstone, sometimes at a suite at the St. Regis that Marcus had maintained for 15 years. They're going to run, James predicted during one of their strategy sessions. The pressure's getting to them. Let them try, Sarah Brennan said. We have their passports flagged. Any attempt to leave the country triggers an alert. I don't think they'll run, Victoria said, studying the latest photos. Marcus and Emma at lunch, holding hands under the table like teenagers. They think they're winning. They think after the anniversary party they'll be free. They've waited 20 years. They can wait 4 more weeks. But Victoria was wrong. The next morning she woke to find Marcus's side of the bed empty and a letter on his pillow. Victoria, by the time you read this, I'll be at my lawyer's office. I'm filing for divorce. I know this seems sudden, but I've been unhappy for years. We've grown apart. You've become so focused on your gallery, your social position, that you've forgotten what real love looks like. I've found someone who makes me remember what happiness feels like. I'm not asking for much, just my freedom. You can keep the penthouse, a generous settlement. Let's handle this with dignity. Marcus. Victoria read it twice, then laughed. Actually laughed. He thought he was controlling the narrative. He thought he could file first, claim abandonment, or irreconcilable differences, and walk away clean. She called Sarah Brennan. He filed. This morning. Perfect. We counterfew immediately. Everything we have, the fraud, the infidelity, the medical malpractice. The court will freeze all assets pending investigation. What about the anniversary party? Oh, honey, the party just became evidence. Maintaining appearances while planning to abandon your marriage? Judges hate that. Victoria dressed in her sharpest suit, blood-red Valentino, the color of war, and went to Marcus's office. She walked past his secretary, who tried to stop her, straight into the boardroom where Marcus sat with his lawyers, Robert, and 3 board members. "Gentlemen," she said, placing a thick folder on the table. "I thought you should see this before my lawyers file it with the court this afternoon." Marcus went pale. "Victoria, this isn't the place, isn't it? This is where you've been stealing from, after all." She opened the folder, spreading out the evidence. Bank transfers, shell company documentation, the $300 million systematically diverted over 20 years. Every transaction traceable, every fraud documented. Robert picked up one of the papers, his face hardening as he read. "Marcus, what is this?" "It's nothing. She's upset about the divorce." "The divorce you filed this morning, after 25 years, while we're investigating financial irregularities?" Robert's voice was ice. "This looks like you were preparing to run with company funds. I would never." "You already have," Victoria interrupted. $300 million, funneled to your mistress over 20 years. My sister." "Oh, didn't I mention? The woman he's leaving me for is Emma, my younger sister. They've been together since before our wedding. They have 3 children together." The room erupted. Board members shouting, lawyers frantically taking notes, Robert looking like he might punch his brother. "Proof," Marcus managed to say. "You have no proof." Victoria pulled out her phone, connected it to the boardroom screen, and played a video. Marcus and Emma in her brownstone that morning, him promising her everything would be fine once the divorce was filed, her saying she was tired of hiding their children, him assuring her that soon David, Sophia, and Michael would have the Sterling name. "Our investigator is very thorough," Victoria said into the stunned silence. "There's more. 20 years' worth. Would you like to see it all, or should we save it for court?" Marcus stood, his face twisted with rage. "You vindictive "Careful," Victoria warned. "Anything you say here will be used in the criminal proceedings. Wire fraud, tax evasion, embezzlement. Your lawyer can explain the penalties. 20 years per count, I believe?" She turned to Robert. "The board might want to consider an emergency meeting. The SEC will be very interested in how Sterling Industries handles this." As she walked to the door, Marcus called out, "What about the children?" "You're going to destroy their lives for revenge?" She turned back. "I've established trust funds for David, Sophia, and Michael. Clean money, not stolen funds. They'll be fine. Better than fine. They'll finally know who their father is. A criminal and a liar, but at least they'll know. The anniversary party? Oh, we're still having it. My parents deserve their celebration. You and Emma can explain your absence however you like. Or attend and face everyone who will have heard the news by then. Your choice." She left him there, surrounded by lawyers and board members, and the wreckage of his carefully constructed life. Outside, her phone was buzzing. Emma, calling repeatedly. Victoria finally answered. "How could you?" Emma sobbed. "The children. Everyone will know." "Yes," Victoria said simply. "Everyone will know what you did. What you both did. For 20 years. I loved him. I've always loved him. And I loved you. I loved you both. But that didn't matter, did it? Victoria, please. Not like this. The kids. We'll finally have the truth. That's more than I got for 2 decades. She hung up and got in her car. 4 weeks until the anniversary party. But the bombs had already started exploding. That evening, she sat in her penthouse now, as Marcus had been served with an emergency restraining order, keeping him from the property pending the asset freeze, and watched the sun set over Central Park. Her phone rang constantly, her mother, friends, society reporters who'd caught wind of the scandal. She ignored them all. Tomorrow, she'd have to face her parents, explain how their golden son-in-law and beloved younger daughter had betrayed everyone. She'd have to watch her mother cry and her father rage. She'd have to see the family she'd tried to protect splinter apart. But tonight, she poured herself a glass of the Chateau Margaux she'd been saving for a special occasion, and stood at the window where she'd stood that night after finding the key. The city glittered below, unaware that Victoria Chen-Sterling was no longer the fool in the story. She thought about Michael at his soccer game, David's questions about genetics, Sophia's artistic eye that saw everything. They'd be hurt by this, inevitably, but they'd also be free from the lies that had defined their existence. Her phone buzzed once more. A text from an unknown number, but she recognized the writing style immediately. David. Aunt Victoria, I ran a DNA analysis using hair samples. I know Marcus Sterling is our father. I've known for months. Thank you for protecting us while you destroyed them. -D, smart boy, brilliant boy. Maybe something good would come from this wreckage after all. Victoria raised her glass to the city lights, to the truth finally freed, to the anniversary party that would still happen, but with a very different guest list. The second act was ending. The finale was yet to come. The St. Regis ballroom looked like something from a dream. Hundreds of white roses cascading from crystal vases. Golden light from the chandeliers catching on champagne flutes. 150 of New York's elite gathered to celebrate Richard and Linda Chen's 50 years of marriage. Victoria stood at the entrance in a stunning golden Versace gown, greeting guests with a smile that never wavered, even as whispers followed in her wake. 3 weeks had passed since the boardroom confrontation. 3 weeks of legal depositions, emergency board meetings, and headlines that screamed variations of Sterling scandal billionaire's 20-year affair with sister-in-law exposed. Marcus was under federal investigation. Emma had been fired from her UN position. And yet here they all were, pretending civilization still mattered. Victoria, darling, you look absolutely radiant, Senator Patricia Walsh said, air-kissing her cheek. Such strength you've shown. And still hosting this beautiful party for your parents. They deserve their celebration, Victoria replied smoothly. 50 years of real love and loyalty should be honored. The senator's eyes glittered with barely concealed curiosity. And will Marcus be attending? That remains to be seen. He was, in fact, sitting in his car outside, according to the security team Victoria had hired. Emma was with him. They'd been there for 20 minutes, arguing about whether to come in. The court had frozen Marcus's assets but hadn't restricted his movements. Yet, Aunt Victoria! She turned to find David approaching in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, looking so much like a young Marcus it took her breath away. Beside him, Sophia in emerald green, and Michael in his first real suit, trying not to fidget with his tie. You all look wonderful, she said, meaning it. David met her eyes steadily. Thank you for making sure we could come, Mom said. He paused. Well, it doesn't matter what she said. She's your mother, David. That will always matter. She lied to us our whole lives, Sophia said quietly, her artistic soul clearly struggling with the deception. Every day was a lie. Not everything, Victoria said gently. Her love for you was real. Is real. Adults can love their children completely and still make terrible choices. Michael, young enough to be more confused than angry, asked, Are you still our aunt? Victoria pulled him into a hug. Always. Nothing changes that. Even though you hate our parents? David asked bluntly. I don't hate them. I'm furious with them, disappointed in them, and yes, I've ensured they face consequences for their actions. But hate? Number. Hate would mean they still have power over me. They don't. Her father appeared at her elbow, resplendent in his tuxedo, but looking every one of his 75 years. The last 3 weeks had aged him, learning that his son-in-law and younger daughter had betrayed not just Victoria, but the entire family had nearly broken him. They're here, he said quietly. In the lobby. Your mother is speaking with them. Victoria nodded. It's her choice if they attend. You're remarkably calm. The storm has already happened, Dad. This is just the cleanup. Inside the ballroom, guests mingled, pretending not to watch the entrance while absolutely watching the entrance. The Sterling Industries board members clustered together, discussing the emergency succession plan that had removed Marcus as CEO. Robert Sterling, Marcus's brother, now held the position and was systematically undoing 20 years of his brother's financial maneuvers. Mrs. Sterling. Sorry, Miss Chen. Robert approached with an apologetic smile. Force of habit. Victoria is fine, Robert. I wanted you to know we found more. Offshore accounts in the Caymans, Switzerland, Singapore. Another 150 million, all siphoned from subsidiaries. Will the company survive? Thanks to your early warning? Yes, if this had gone on another year. He shook his head. We owe you everything. You owe me nothing. I was protecting myself. And in doing so, you saved 8,000 jobs and preserved a company worth billions. The board wants to offer you a position, chief ethics officer if you're interested. Before she could respond, a ripple went through the crowd. Marcus and Emma had entered, flanked by Linda Chen, who looked like she'd aged a decade in the past month. Emma wore black, appropriate, Victoria thought, for the funeral of her reputation. Marcus was in his usual perfectly tailored suit, but his face was gaunt, his legendary confidence cracked. They stood just inside the doorway, and for a moment, the entire room held its breath. Then Victoria did something that surprised everyone, including herself. She walked over to them. Emma, Marcus, her voice carried across the silent room. Thank you for coming to celebrate Mom and Dad. Emma's eyes filled with tears. Victoria, I ... Not here, Victoria said firmly. Not tonight. This is about them, not us. She turned to the room, raising her champagne glass. Ladies and gentlemen, before we celebrate my parents' golden anniversary, I'd like to address the elephant in the room. Or should I say, the elephants? A nervous titter ran through the crowd. Yes, my husband of 25 years has been having an affair with my sister for 20 of those years. Yes, they have 3 children together. Yes, it's all very dynasty and would make an excellent Netflix series. More laughter, less nervous now. But tonight isn't about that scandal. Tonight is about Richard and Linda Chen, who came to this country with nothing but hope and built not just a business empire, but a family. An imperfect family, clearly, but a family nonetheless. She gestured to her parents. They taught us that love isn't just a feeling. It's a choice you make every day. They chose each other again and again for 50 years. Through poverty and wealth, through losses and gains, through joy and sorrow. They chose honesty when lying would have been easier. They chose loyalty when temptation knocked. They chose to build rather than tear down. Her gaze swept over Marcus and Emma. Not all of us learned those lessons well. But that's our failure, not theirs. Richard stood, raising his own glass. My daughter is too kind. Linda and I are heartbroken by recent events, but we're also proud of Victoria for her strength, proud of David, Sophia, and Michael for their resilience, and yes, still proud of Emma and Marcus, despite everything, because that's what family does. We can be furious and disappointed and still choose love. Not the kind of love that ignores consequences or enables bad behavior, but the kind that says, you failed, face your consequences, and know that somewhere, deep beneath the anger, love remains. Linda stood beside him, tears streaming down her face. 50 years ago, I married Richard in a courthouse in Queens. We had $17 between us and dreams bigger than our tiny apartment. Today, we have wealth beyond our imagination, but more importantly, we have this. All of you, here, celebrating the choice to love, to commit, to stay when leaving would be easier. She looked directly at Emma, who was crying silently. Emma, my daughter, you chose wrong. You chose passion over principle, secrecy over truth. But you're still my daughter. That doesn't change. Neither does my disappointment. Then to Marcus. And you, who we welcomed as a son, you betrayed not just Victoria, but all of us. You made us complicit in your deception every time we sat at a table together. Every family photo where we didn't know we were documenting your double life. Mom, Emma whispered, I'm so sorry. I know, Linda said simply, but sorry doesn't erase 20 years. The room was utterly silent, watching this family drama play out with the fascination usually reserved for theater. Victoria stepped forward again. And now, as promised, I have a presentation about love, loyalty, and truth. The lights dimmed, and the screens around the room came to life. But instead of the exposé everyone expected, the photos of Marcus and Emma, the evidence of their affair, Victoria had done something different. The video began with Richard and Linda's wedding photo, young and hopeful in front of that Queen's courthouse. Then, through the years, building their first restaurant, Victoria's birth, Emma arriving 6 years later, family dinners in their cramped apartment, the girls doing homework at the restaurant while their parents worked 18-hour days. This, Victoria narrated, is what real love looks like. Exhausted parents still reading bedtime stories, a couple arguing about bills but never about commitment, two people building something bigger than themselves. The photos continued. Victoria's first art show with her parents beaming, Emma's graduation where Richard cried, family vacations that were really just driving to free beaches because money was tight. Then came the successful years, the restaurants multiplying, the move to Manhattan, Victoria's wedding where Emma stood as maid of honor, radiant in pink. This moment, Victoria said as the wedding photo lingered, was the last honest moment we had as a family. Everything after was built on deception. The screen went black for a moment, then showed a single photo, Victoria, Emma, and their parents at last year's Thanksgiving, before she'd found the key. They looked happy, complete, a perfect family portrait. But even lies can't completely erase truth. Mom and Dad's love was real, is real. Their commitment, their choice to face every challenge together, that's real, and that's what we're celebrating tonight. The presentation ended with a recent photo of Richard and Linda dancing in their kitchen, unaware Victoria had captured the moment. They looked at each other the way they had 50 years ago, with complete trust, absolute commitment, chosen love. The room erupted in applause. Richard and Linda embraced, both crying. And in that moment, something shifted. Marcus stepped forward. Richard, Linda, His voice broke. I don't deserve your forgiveness. I don't deserve to be here, but I needed to say that you gave me the family I never had growing up. You treated me like a son, and I repaid that with betrayal. I'm sorry. It's inadequate, but it's true. Emma couldn't speak through her tears, but Linda pulled her into an embrace anyway. Not forgiveness, not yet, maybe never, but acknowledgement of the complicated truth that love and disappointment could coexist. David suddenly spoke up, his young voice carrying surprising authority. Grandpa, Grandma, I want to say something. The room turned to this young man who looked so much like Marcus but carried himself with a dignity his father had lost. 3 weeks ago, I learned my entire life was based on a lie. The man I thought had abandoned us was actually at every holiday dinner. My aunt was actually my stepmother, though she never knew it. My mother and father had been lying since before I was born. He paused, gathering himself. I was angry, furious. I wanted to hate everyone. He looked at Victoria. But Aunt Victoria, and she'll always be my aunt, taught me something. She said that people can love you completely and still fail you terribly. That truth and consequences matter, but so does choosing what to do with your pain. She could have destroyed us all. Instead, she protected us kids while ensuring our parents faced justice. That's strength. That's love. That's the legacy I want to carry forward. Sophia stood beside her brother. I'm an artist. I see things others miss, and I missed this completely. It makes me question everything I thought I knew about reading people, about truth in art and life. But I also saw something else these past weeks. Aunt Victoria making sure we were okay, even while her world was ending. Our grandparents choosing to still love us despite our origins in deception. Uncle Robert, she glanced at Marcus's brother, helping us understand the financial truths while protecting our futures. That's family. Messy, complicated, but real. Michael, not to be outdone by his siblings, added, I don't understand everything that happened, but I know Aunt Victoria still came to my soccer games even after she knew the truth. That means something, right? Everything, Victoria said softly. It means everything. The band began playing The Way You Look Tonight, Richard and Linda's wedding song. The elderly couple moved to the dance floor, and gradually others joined them. The party, impossibly, continued. Victoria stood at the edge of the room, watching. Marcus approached, maintaining a careful distance. The presentation, he said quietly. You could have destroyed us completely. I already did that in court. No, I mean really destroyed us. Shown everyone the photos, the letters, the evidence, humiliated us. What would be the point? The children don't deserve that. Neither do my parents. After everything, you still protected them. Not you and Emma. Them. The innocent parties. Marcus was quiet for a moment. The forensic accountants found everything, didn't they? Every hidden account, every shell company, every diverted dollar. So I'm finished. Financially, criminally, socially? Yes. Victoria turned to look at him directly. But as a father? That's up to you. David, Sophia, and Michael need a father, even a flawed one. Don't fail them the way you failed me. Victoria, we're done, Marcus. We've been done since before our wedding, apparently. But those children aren't done. They're just beginning. Don't ruin that, too. Emma approached, mascara long since surrendered to tears. Can we talk? Please? Victoria glanced around the room, her parents dancing, guests mingling, her nephew and nieces talking with cousins who were still adjusting to the new family dynamic. 5 minutes, outside. They stepped onto the terrace overlooking Fifth Avenue, the April night cool but clear. The city stretched out below them, glittering and indifferent to personal catastrophes. I loved him first, Emma said without preamble. Before you ever met him. I was interning at Sterling Industries the summer before you met. We had an affair. Then he met you at that auction and said I was too young, that he needed someone established, sophisticated, someone like you. Victoria said nothing, waiting. I tried to stay away. But the night before your wedding, he came to my room, said he'd made a mistake, that I was the one he really loved, but it was too late to call off the wedding. The business implications, the social embarrassment. He couldn't face it. So instead, you both decided to deceive me for 20 years. It wasn't supposed to last that long. He was going to leave you after a year or two, once the marriage had served its purpose for his business reputation. But then you were so perfect together in public, the power couple. And I got pregnant with David, and he said we had to be careful, strategic. 20 years of being careful and strategic. While I underwent fertility treatments that were sabotaged, Emma flinched. I didn't know about that until recently. I thought you really couldn't have children. I told myself I was giving him what you couldn't. How noble of you. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I know I won't get it. I just wanted you to know that it wasn't about hurting you. It was about loving him. Victoria laughed, sharp and bitter. Emma, you sat with me through 3 IVF cycles. You held me while I cried about being barren. You helped me decorate nurseries that would never be used. Every single moment of that, you knew your children, his children, were alive and thriving. That wasn't about loving him. That was about winning. Maybe, Emma admitted, maybe I needed to win something over my perfect older sister. The successful one, the beautiful one, the one who got everything first. I would have given you everything if you'd asked. Instead, you took it. I know. They stood in silence, 2 sisters on a terrace, 20 years of deception between them like a canyon that couldn't be crossed. The children, Emma finally said. Thank you for protecting them. The trust funds, making sure they could still come tonight, not letting them become complete pariahs. They're innocent. So were you. Yes, Victoria agreed. I was. What happens now? Now? Now Marcus faces federal charges for wire fraud and embezzlement. You face social exile and starting over with nothing. The prenuptial agreement's infidelity clause means you get nothing from him, and he has nothing to give anyway. I continue with the divorce proceedings and take everything that's left. The children finish school with trust funds I've provided. Our parents try to heal from this betrayal, and we all move forward, separately. Will you ever forgive me? Victoria looked at her sister, still beautiful, still the girl she'd taught to ride a bike, still the woman who'd stolen her life. Forgiveness isn't mine to give yet. I'm still too angry. Maybe someday, years from now, when the wounds aren't so fresh. But Emma, we'll never be sisters again. That relationship died the first night you slept with my husband. Emma nodded, tears falling silently. I know. Go inside. Dance with Dad. He needs it, and it might be your last chance for a while. Emma left, and Victoria stood alone on the terrace. The party sounds drifted out. Laughter, music, the clink of glasses, normal sounds of celebration, as if the world hadn't fundamentally shifted. Aunt Victoria? She turned to find David standing in the doorway, looking so young despite his height and Marcus's features. Shouldn't you be inside enjoying the party? I wanted to check on you, and to give you this. He handed her an envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter in David's precise script. Dear Aunt Victoria, I've been thinking about truth and family and the complicated space between them. You asked me once what I wanted to study at MIT, and I said artificial intelligence. But what I really want to understand is human intelligence, how we can be so smart and so stupid simultaneously, how we can love and betray the same people, how we can build elaborate lies that become more real than truth. You showed me something these past weeks, not just that my parents were liars, but that strength isn't about not getting hurt. It's about choosing what to do with the pain. You chose justice but also mercy, protection but also consequences. You chose to end one story and begin another. I want you to know that biology doesn't determine family. Choice does. And I choose to still call you my aunt, to still see you as the woman who taught me chess when I was 7, who never missed a science fair, who showed up to my graduation even after learning I was the product of the betrayal that destroyed your life. Mom and Marcus, I can't call him Dad yet, will face their consequences. But I wanted you to know that their choices don't define us kids. We get to write our own story now, and I plan to make it one of integrity, loyalty, and truth. Thank you for showing us how to survive the unthinkable with grace. Your nephew, by choice if not by blood, David. Victoria wiped away tears she hadn't realized were falling. You're going to be better than all of us, aren't you? I'm going to try. Someone has to break the cycle. They stood together, aunt and nephew, looking out at the city lights. There's something else, David said. I've been accepted to a summer program at MIT, Artificial Intelligence and Ethics. I want to understand how to build systems that can't be corrupted the way people can. That's ambitious. Someone once told me that ambitious is just another word for necessary when the status quo is broken. Who told you that? You did. At my middle school graduation, when I was worried about high school being too hard. She had said that, she remembered now, before everything, when he was just her beloved nephew, when the family still made sense. Aunt Victoria, will you be okay? She considered the question. Her marriage was over, exposed as a 20-year fraud. Her sister was dead to her in every way that mattered. Her social world was watching her every move, waiting to see if she'd crumble. But she was free. Free from lies she hadn't even known were suffocating her. Free to build something real from the wreckage. Free to choose her own path for the first time in 25 years. Yes, she said, meaning it. I'm going to be just fine. Inside, the party was winding down. Richard and Linda were still dancing, holding each other like survivors of a shipwreck who'd found the same piece of driftwood. Marcus sat alone at a table, watching his children, finally acknowledged as his children, talking with other guests. Emma stood with their mother, both of them crying quietly. Victoria surveyed the scene, her family, broken and reformed into something unrecognizable but perhaps more honest. The anniversary party had become something else entirely, a funeral for the family they'd been, a birth announcement for whatever they'd become. Robert Sterling approached with a final piece of news. The board met. We're offering you Marcus's position, CEO of Sterling Industries. You know the company, you've saved it from ruin, and frankly, we trust you more than anyone else right now. That's generous, but think about it. The company needs leadership with integrity. The employees need to know someone ethical is at the helm. And Victoria, you've already proven you can handle the worst situations with grace and strategic brilliance. She looked around the room again, at David discussing code with another guest, at Sophia sketching the scene in her notebook, at Michael laughing with his cousins, at her parents, still dancing, at the wreckage and the possibility. I'll think about it, she said. As the last guests departed and the ballroom began to empty, Victoria stood in the center of the dance floor. The golden anniversary banner still hung overhead. 50 years of love in elegant script. 50 years. Her parents had built 50 years of truth. She discovered 20 years of lies. But tomorrow would be the first day of whatever came next. Emma appeared one last time, holding Michael's hand. He wants to say goodbye. Michael hugged Victoria tightly. Will I still see you? Every soccer game, she promised. Every school play. Every science fair. Nothing changes that. Even though Mom and Marcus hurt you? Even then, love isn't canceled by other people's failures, Michael. Remember that. As they left, Emma turned back. Victoria? That first year, I almost told you everything. 100 times I almost confessed. Why didn't you? Because I was a coward. And because I knew you'd forgive me then, and I didn't deserve forgiveness. You still don't. I know. But I needed you to know that I knew, even then, that what I was doing was unforgivable. She left with her children, Marcus's children, and Victoria was alone in the ballroom with the ghosts of 50 years of marriage, 25 years of deception, and 1 night of truth. Her phone buzzed, a message from her lawyer. Divorce papers filed, fraud charges pressed, assets frozen. You've won everything. But standing there in the golden light of the emptying ballroom, Victoria didn't feel like she'd won. She felt like she'd survived, and maybe, for now, that was enough. Tomorrow, she'd decide about the CEO position. Tomorrow, she'd figure out how to build a life that wasn't defined by betrayal. Tomorrow, she'd begin the work of becoming whoever Victoria Chen was when she wasn't Mrs. Sterling. But tonight, she walked to the bandstand and asked the last remaining musician, an elderly pianist, for one more song. What would you like to hear? He asked. Something new, she said. Something I've never heard before. As the unfamiliar melody filled the empty ballroom, Victoria Chen closed her eyes and danced alone, finally free.